This presentation, part 1 of my Korps-Kommandeur series of examples of play or training videos, shows an example game of Korps-Kommandeur version 6 using a summer 1939 scenario with the Germans attacking a Polish position for the first half of the game, followed by a Polish counterattack. We're not dealing with the Polish counterattack. The objective is just to provide an example of the beginning of the game to give people an idea of how the game flow works. The Polish are defending with an infantry regiment, with the Germans attacking with a motorised infantry regiment consisting of 2 infantry battalions and 1 panzer battalion. The playing area is 90 centimetres wide by 120 centimetres deep, with the Polish forces allowed to deploy anywhere except the first 30 centimetres of the German player edge. The Polish forces are all entrenched. Korps-Kommandeur version 6 is originally based on R.E. Taylor's Korps-Commander game system. While totally rewritten and with most of the game systems replaced, it is nonetheless designed to achieve the same objective as the original Korps-Commander rules. Each element consists of between 1 and 9 strength points, each of which represents 1 vehicle, gun or 10 men. The game scale is 1 in 10,000 and the game turn scale is 1 hour. Players of Korps-Commander would find many aspects of these rules familiar. However, the main changes were designed to make the rules more playable. Korps-Commander, while very accurate in detail, suffered from excessive complexity. Korps-Commander version 6 is basically a quick play version of these rules. Korps-Commander 6 did not just come directly from R.E. Taylor's Korps-Commander. My first attempt to simplify Korps-Commander was Korps-Commander version 5, which attempted to retain all the detail of the original rules. While simpler to play, the differences were minimal and players would be better off staying with the original rules rather than go to the effort of learning a whole new set of rules. Korps-Commander version 6 was another rewrite which removed as much complexity as possible while retaining the detail which would not impact gameplay. The results so far have been promising, with the rules playing out in a similar manner to the original while doing so in a much shorter time frame. The other benefit is ease of learning the rules and the ability to quickly reference rules during a game due to the much shorter rules. You can download the rules and supporting material from the Korps-Kommandeur IO group site. This video covers the initial game terms of the most complete playtest of the rules so far. Actually, this is an old video and I'm redoing it. I've played the games, or I've used these rules many times since, and they all seem to play very much similar to the original Korps-Commander, but much quicker. Quicker by a factor of almost 4. The Polish have deployed their 3 infantry battalions in a simple line, echeloned, with the regimental support forces behind the centre. The Germans could attack along either of the 2 roads, so these are the main Polish defence priorities. The Germans could attack up the right flank, but the Polish echelon line makes any outflanking manoeuvre difficult, so the main thrust would likely be one of the 2 roads. This does not show the entire width of the playing area, but the Polish right flank consists of hills, which are also rough, and the left consists of streams. These do not need to be covered by the defenders. If the Germans had unlimited time, they could try and outflank this position, but that is not the case in this scenario. The Germans need to control the playing area by midday, which is when the Polish counterattack force arrives. The Germans will start the attack on the first daylight game turn, which is game turn 7. If they tried to launch the attack during the night or dawn in order to maximise the time available to take the playing area, they risk fatigue and exhaustion later in the day. An element will become fatigued after 8 daylight game turns and exhausted after 4 more daylight game turns. They will need to rest in order to recover, which may be difficult if they're defending against a Polish counterattack which is occurring in daylight game turns. As it's autumn, there are 12 daylight game turns. The first sub-phase is the sub-reinforcement phase, and the German attacking forces are placed on the playing edge. There are no Polish reinforcements. During the supply determination sub-phase, all elements have a line of supply. Supply is traced along the road network, which is unblocked, and it comes from the player edge, and it can also be traced from headquarters a certain distance. We also determined that all elements are under command control, and command control basically is traced from headquarters. The next subphase is the initiative subphase. During the initiative subphase, both players throw 2 d6 die. The Germans throw a 6 and add 9, 3 for quality, 1 for strategic attacker, 1 for operational attacker, 2 for tactical attacker and 2 for nationality modifiers, giving the Germans a total of 15. The Polish player throws an 8 and adds 3 for quality and 1 for nationality modifier, giving the Polish a total of 12. The Germans win the initiative and choose to move second. They have failed to achieve a breakthrough, which is a blow as it will slow down the attack. You can quickly see that the attacker in the first half of the game will have a good chance of winning the initiative. In this example, the Germans have a +4 in the first half of the game, so any die roll where they exceed the Polish score by 2 or more will result in a breakthrough. This is a big advantage. As for the Polish, it's not really a big disadvantage, as all the troops are fortified and are generally immobile. So whether or not, for them to choose which order they wish to move is not really that relevant. The key thing is they want to avoid the Germans from getting a breakthrough. In the first half of the game, the Germans +2 becomes in the second half of the game, the Germans +2 becomes a -2, so the benefit will be eliminated. On the other hand, the Polish player gets no real benefit. Because this is a Poland 1939, the Polish player gets no benefits when attacking. If the Polish player was attacking, the game would be very difficult for the Polish player. The way the scenarios are designed is to try and encourage players to conduct realistic games. A player could assume the Polish attack was part of the Battle of Brzda, where the Polish were the operational attacker. The scenario would be better for the Polish player in this case. Historically, this attack did not include the mechanised brigades, so would be rather boring. But saying this, the rules do not disallow these type of rare attacks, they just make it less likely players would want to play them. The main driver in all these initiative and in modifiers, etc., was to stop the common habit of the German player collecting lots of late war tanks and then expecting to be the attacker. They can do so, but they will not get the same initiative advantage as they enjoyed in 1939 and 1941 with no sexy tanks. In summary, if the Germans want lots of free-flowing, mobile attacking, they're going to have to deal with Panzer Is to Panzer IVs. If they want sexy tanks, they're going to have to deal with the fact that the situation around them is not very pleasant. The Germans need to close with the enemy as quickly as possible. Because they did not achieve a breakthrough, they conduct standard movement. If they achieved a breakthrough, they could adopt travel mode and then change to standard mode when they got close to the enemy. This would allow them to move 25 centimetres towards the enemy. But as this is not the case, they only move 20 centimetres for wheeled vehicles at least. It doesn't sound like a big advantage, but it does give the Germans a significant benefit. However, I must admit it would give the Germans a bigger benefit in the following game turns if they achieved a breakthrough. While they can travel along the roads as well, the congestion in this case would give it minimal benefits. The only other factor to consider is changing mode is an opportunity fire trigger. However, the only weapon which could conduct this type of fire is the anti-tank guns, which has an opportunity fire range of 6 centimetres. As long as the Germans stay out of this range, they are safe from opportunity fire. The Germans conduct 2 actions. Nothing occurs during the housekeeping phase and the game turn marker is advanced by 1. At the end of the German action phase, they are deemed to control the first row for the first time, so gain 1 VP. This occurs because they had 34 elements in the first row at some point during game turn 7, and the Polish had no elements, so they gain control and a victory point as a result. During a game turn 8 initiative phase, the German spins a 7 and the Polish spins an 8. The Germans once again wins initiative but fails to gain a breakthrough. They decide to once again be the second player. All elements are under command control and supply, and there are no order changes. It should be noted the German artillery is under fire support orders and allocated to the regimental headquarters. This allows all the battalions to call down artillery support, but with a quality test required if an element subordinate to a battalion headquarters calls down fire support. The Polish artillery is subordinate to the regimental headquarters and is also under a fire support order with the same restrictions and conditions as the Germans. At the end of the game turn, the Germans end the game turn with 22 elements in the next row. But as the Polish have 23 elements in that row, they remain in control of it. Thus, we don't get the 1 VP. It's not really so important to monitor VPs a game turn by game turn, as you can pretty much determine what the Germans control at pretty much any time during the game based on memory. It's only if you get close to the end of the game or at a critical point just before the Polish counterattack that it may be important. During game turn 9, the Germans win initiative but fail to gain a breakthrough. They move second and launch a major armoured attack on the left flank. This close combat lasts for several stages, which will be looked at in detail in the following slides. In order to get to a good position before the German reinforcements arrive, the Germans need to break through quickly with minimal losses. Because the Germans do not wish to expend any time bringing down indirect fire and air support, they do not conduct any this game turn, for the simple reason that they do not see the Polish forces yet. They need to move within 6 centimetres in order to see the Polish infantry. If the Polish had opened fire, they could have been seen from within 15 centimetres. So the Polish do not open fire at the German trucks carrying the German Panzer Grenadiers as a result. This shows the close assaults in more detail. Each close assault will be fully executed one at a time, but in this example we're all executing all the close assaults together in order to keep the length of the video down. What do I mean when I say this? Normally each close assault would consist of, let's say, 4 rounds, and you would go through 4 rounds with each individual conflict, get a resolution, then go to the next one. What I'm doing in this particular video is I'm showing you the first round of all 5 of these close assaults. Again, the purpose is to keep the length of the video down. The Germans are using their Panzer IIs, which are not really very effective against infantry, relying on their coaxial machine gun in the most part. In addition, the Polish are entrenched with one in a built-up area as well. Panzer IIs have close support. 2 of the close supports are Panzer IVs, and it may have been better for the Panzer IVs to have been leading the attack in these 2 close assaults. If the optional stacking rules were used, the close support elements could be stacked with the front rank, and some of the highly effective Panzer IV 7.5cm howitzer armed tanks could have been used. The result of the first round is average, with the Polish losing 7 strength points and 2 infantry elements becoming disordered. The Germans also lose 7 strength points and also have 2 elements becoming disordered. This is not a good start for the Germans. Just a quick explanation on the red boxes. This shows the details of the attack in a standard format which I use within the rules. If we go to the top left example, which shows a Panzer IIe versus infantry, the breakdown of this is as follows. The first, Panzer II versus infantry, tells you what is attacking what. The next is the type of attack, in this case a close assault against a soft target. It then gives you the close assault effectiveness of the attacker, which happens to be C2 or a CAE of 2. It then tells you the row, which happens to be soft inf, and we know the column is 2 because the CAE is 2. Modifiers are the defender is in cover in rough, which means they get a -2 modifier, but then the attacker has close support, which means it gets a +2 modifier. Thus, there is no overall change to the column. Thus, we're using column 2 at strength point 8. The result is close assault 5+. Close assault means that every die you roll, 5+ gives you a hit. Thus, the result, the final result of all this is 5d6/5+, which means you get 5 d6 die, and if you spin a 5 or greater on each of those dies, you get 1 hit. In this case, the Germans spin their 5 dies and they only get 1 hit. Because the defender is already in cover, it can't adopt a cover in order to absorb a loss. It must take 1 loss. In the second round of close combat, the Germans do better, but the tempo is certainly lower. The Polish lose 4 strength points and the Germans lose 3 strength points. No additional disorder occurs. The key thing here is you want to try and get disorder in order to achieve what you want to achieve. In the third round of close combat, the Germans finally start breaking the Polish front line. While both sides lose 2 strength points, a Polish infantry suffers a second disorder and becomes disrupted. It's removed and eligible for rally during the housekeeping phase. The German element can now advance into the area vacated, and the close support element can move adjacent to the area vacated. During the fourth round, the Germans break through 2 more Polish infantry elements, but 1 Panzer II element decides to retreat. It has no chance of victory, and with the rest of the line collapsing, it's not required. The final close combat takes a further 3 rounds before the Polish infantry become disrupted. There is no benefit in the Polish forces retreating, as in the open the infantry would be slaughtered by the German army, so it has no choice but to hold on until it becomes disrupted in a desperate attempt that maybe it would survive. It's now a game turn 10. The Germans win the initiative again and decide to move first in this case. Once again, there is no breakthrough. This is a critical benefit which, if the Germans had achieved, would really have sped up its attack. But anyway, they didn't. Because the Polish were conducting fire combat last game turn, they can be seen from 15 centimetres away. The Germans conduct indirect fire from their 10.5 centimetre and 7.5 centimetre indirect fire elements, inflicting some casualties. They also conduct direct fire using their MMG and infantry elements, and the Polish respond with opportunity fire or return fire. The Germans also attempt to conduct air support, but some unlucky quality die rolls and the use of the entire Polish fighter force results in this having no effect. However, next game turn the Germans will have air superiority as all the Polish fighters are waiting out their sortie time, which will give the Germans another significant benefit in game turn 11. This shows the details of the fire support by the 10.5 centimetre howitzers and the close assault. The Germans attempted to use both batteries of 10.5 centimetre howitzers but failed their quality tests on one battery. While the element is not disordered, as there was no 25% loss, it has suffered a total of 4 casualties, or more than 50% from all causes, resulting in it becoming disordered. For the next close assault round, any single casualty will result in a second disorder and disruption. So the indirect fire did dramatically weaken that Polish defence position. There is a second close assault against the HQ company, which should result in an easy victory. As the battalion HQ is stacked with it, it is disrupted as well, which is a very bad situation for the battalion. At the end of game turn 10, the Germans now control the second row. They have 2 more game turns to prepare for the German or the Polish counterattack, and would be lucky to take row 3 before they do arrive, which did actually occur. Germans were then pushed back to row 2, ending the game with 5 victory points and a draw. I've used this scenario using a number of different rules, and the final results are reasonable. There was less movement than LWRS, but more compared with the original Korps-Kommandeur, and very similar to Korps-Kommandeur version 5, although taking much less time to achieve it. Game length was about 5 hours, not including setup and pack-up time. This is a bit longer than I hoped, but considering this was an early playtest, it's possible I could get the same game turn down to 4 hours. As indicated before, this original video was created quite a while ago, and this is an updated version. In all my playtests, I was unable to get the time really down beyond 5 hours to play 10 game turns. My other games, we became more experienced, but as a result, we started doing more complex things, which slowed things down. Nonetheless, 10 game turns in 5 hours, or at the most 6 hours, is a reasonable game length for an all-day game. My conclusion for this game. As with the original R.E. Taylor Korps-Kommandeur, many game turns were expended in manoeuvre, which occurred reasonably quickly. When combat actually occurred, it dramatically slowed the game down. But in the entire game, there were only 2 critical major combats: the breaking of the Polish right flank and the Polish attempt to cut off the German armoured advances, which occurred much later in the game. The game length was 12 game turns, which was a good thing as the Germans were exhausted during dusk and needed the night game turns to stop combat. This concludes my playtest of these rules. I am certain additional minor modifications will occur, but the basic rules framework and play flow was good, so these will not change in any significant manner. Denken Sie daran, immer für Heil, Heimatland zu kämpfen.